My bet is that you've achieved something in your life, making you a successful person. But before you became successful, you probably looked at success as something that was going to solve every single one of the problems you faced in your life. But then once you got there, you realized that you can be just as miserable being successful as you were without it. But something you probably didn't realize is that there's actually four common beliefs that successful people have that actually prevent them from being able to enjoy any of it. In this video, we're going to go through what each of those four common beliefs are, but more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can get around those things and actually enjoy some of the achievements that you made. And by achievement, I'm talking about anything you've ever tried to get. And this is a big scale because we can look at success as something that needs to be massive, huge. We're talking big cars or big houses, fast cars. We're talking all the earmarkings that we typically look at as successful in our society here in the United States. But success comes at many, many different levels. We can be talking about just finding a career that you actually love or a person that you actually love and finally getting one of these relationships. These are all things that are achievements. So whether you feel like you're ultimately as successful as you quote should be or not, I'll have you consider for purposes of this that you are successful in some way, shape, or form. But just like everybody who gets there, you realize that it doesn't really solve every single problem that you probably thought success was going to solve in the beginning. And that's because of these four beliefs. And so let's jump into the first belief that actually prevents you from being able to enjoy the success that you have. And it's that you think success is fragile, which is a natural, normal thing to think because of how hard it is to achieve. When you think back to your last achievement or your biggest achievement, it probably felt meaningful and significant to you, in part because of how much effort you actually had to put out to get whatever it was. And so when we think that we have nothing to lose, because you probably didn't have much to lose when you first started out trying to achieve whatever it was, you get to play with a different level of intensity than you do once you actually have it. And so when you have it, there's this little shift that happens in the way that you act. And the way that you act in this makes it so, one, you're unlikely to win more, but two, also so you can't enjoy the win that you have, which is that you start playing not to lose instead of playing to win, which is another natural thing. We'd have to expect that to be part of the way that you act because you have something to lose now, and something to lose can certainly be scary. And we look at that as something that's fragile. Everything that we achieve, realizing how hard it was, makes us think that it could go away at any time. And so naturally we're scared. And so we start taking these defensive positions to try to protect whatever it was that we achieved. And now instantly that's got us in a mode of scarcity. And scarcity is just never a good place to play from because it always has us making decisions that don't ultimately make our lives better. We're just trying to make it not worse. And the crazy thing is that every time you try to do something to make your life just not worse, it ends up actually becoming just a little bit worse. And so you're far better off by having the mentality of I'm playing to win no matter what, even when you achieve it, because in reality, success probably wasn't that fragile in the first place. You put out measures of effort and that got in measures of results. It was probably because you learned a few things along the way. It was probably because you had some of the right conversations with the right people at the right time, including the conversation with yourself. And that led you to get whatever it is you have. And so your thought that it's fragile probably isn't the most true statement. Most likely, there was a time where it could have been fragile, but you put in the work in order to do it. And that's assuming that you weren't a lottery winner and there was some type of magic luck that happened and you could make a couple wrong decisions and everything could just go away. It takes no discipline to attain that, which is why it's not respected. And that's also why most lottery winners, once they win the lottery, I think they're broke within a couple of years of doing that, no matter how much they earn, because no discipline to attain something means you don't respect it. And if you've achieved something in the definition of we're talking about here, you're successful, you did it probably because you had a way that you were disciplined to achieve it. So that's the very first thing that is a belief system that if you just shift it around a little bit, you'll be able to enjoy your success a little bit more. So let's get on to the second thing that prevents people from being able to enjoy the success that they build in their lives. And that's something that psychologists will call a negativity bias. And a negativity bias does a really, really interesting thing, especially when you become successful, because you start looking around at your environment, whatever your life is and whatever your lifestyle is, however you've chosen to define success, but you start looking around and you see that it's pretty good and it's probably better than what you had imagined or could have dreamed of a long time ago. And that's because when you're on the path of achievement or success, everything that you have right now is something that you used to want. It was a goal that you set, and here you are having it. And of course, we don't always look at it like that, because everything, no matter what we level up to, just becomes boring and ordinary. But in this case, we do have a negativity bias when we achieve something that we feel like is meaningful and significant. And what we tell ourselves when we look around and see that our environment is actually a lot better than we could have hoped for, we think that any single change that we make to that environment only has one possibility, and that's to make things worse. But the challenge with that is that we never really understand what better could possibly look like. And that's simply because we're limited to the vision of our lives that we can somehow define. But when we take actions and when we find these kind of places to lean into that allow us to find greater levels of good than we have definitions for right now, we usually find it. So think back to the time before you had what you have right now and really figure out, like, could you have pictured that turning out as well as it did? And chances are you probably didn't. And I know that without even knowing you, because to get where you are, you had to do something or go someplace that was unknown to you, at least at the time you did it. That's where the next level always lies. It's never where you are right now. People keeping the status quo isn't going to ever produce a greater result than they have at that moment in their life. So naturally, you have to go into something unknown. But again, that belief system in the negativity bias, that the next step is obviously going to be somewhat worse than you have right now, that's simply not true. It's just unknown. And so we can create whatever we want to create, because your eyes, they're not cameras, they're projectors. You can project whatever it is you want your life to look like, and then just make sure that your actions and your intentions match what that looks like, and everything is going to be okay, right? Promise. Let's get on to the third belief that really makes it so you cannot enjoy the success that you have. And this is one that I am super guilty of, which is postponing the enjoyment because you think you haven't earned it yet. So my great example of this in my own life is I finally got my company to a place where I didn't have to work there all the time, right? Super slow learner. It took me 18 years to figure out how not to have a job, and then another 5 years to accept it. But one of the things I realized now that I was subconsciously doing was I was postponing the freedom that I could have had. So postponing the enjoyment because I hadn't, quote, earned it yet. There was a point where I could take Fridays off, and I didn't, because I felt like I hadn't earned it yet. I needed to reach another revenue milestone or another EBITDA milestone. And if you're not familiar with EBITDA, it's a fancy way of saying profit. But I felt like I had to consistently do better than I was doing right now, and then I'll be able to enjoy X. That is such a big problem for people that are on the path to constantly wanting to be better. If you look at the last video I posted, I'll pop a link right there. It's about the tyranny of more, because more in your life, it does become a tyrant, because tyrants tell you what to think. They tell you how to act, and then they completely get on you until you achieve the thing. So you thinking that you need more turns into a tyrant that just happens to live in your own mind. That tells you also this belief system about having to postpone enjoyment because you, quote, haven't earned it yet, is one that drives more and more and more actions, But that leads people to more and more and more burnout. And that doesn't matter if you own your own company or if you work for somebody else. At the high level, low level, like none of that matters. And none of what I talk about is based on some level of super high achievement or super low achievement. It's the mindset that happens when we're on the path of achievement by our own definition. More is also your own definition. There are people that would look at more and go like, man, if I could figure out a way to make $5,000 a month, that's my more. Awesome. Good. That's more. Some people will see, I need to make $500,000 a month. That's your more. More can become a tyrant. Once you meet all your basic living needs, roof over your head, food on your plate, and love in your life, then you really don't need anything more beyond that. It's a lie that we tell ourselves in thinking that if we get more, we're going to feel a little bit better about who we are, what our lives are like, and ultimately have this type of confirmation bias that we are as good as we think we are. But most often, all that does is add more stress. And we don't think about the more stress part when we're going after more. But no matter what, we simply decide we're going to postpone the enjoyment of whatever more looks like for us because we, quote, haven't earned it yet. Here's the news flash on that. You don't have to earn anything. You just get to enjoy it right then and give yourself permission to enjoy it right then, which I think is the big part most people miss. They don't realize that it's themselves that need to give themselves permission to be able to enjoy whatever they have, meaning that this is good as it is. I might want to make it better. Picture a house. Let's say you move into a house that you buy that is a great house, but maybe it's not your dream house. And so you don't really enjoy the house because you're constantly thinking about the dream house that you really, really want. And that is telling you, hey, I have to postpone this joy. Like my brain will not allow me to enjoy the house that I'm in right now because it's not my dream house. That's simply giving yourself permission. Just give yourself permission to enjoy the things you have right now, which, by the way, that's usually helped out by having gratitude for what you have right now. Then you get to enjoy everything along the way. Joy isn't a someday thing. Joy is an everyday thing, but you have to give yourself the permission to do it. Know that what you've done already is awesome. What's normal and ordinary to you is somebody else's extraordinary. And in some cases, that somebody else is the previous version of you. So if you ever feel like you're in a spot where, man, my life is boring, my life is ordinary, just rewind it back to the previous version of you, because we all have a path of our own personal journeys and personal evolutions. Rewind back to the old version of you and now see exactly how boring and ordinary your life is right now. So again, with success, there are all these beliefs that happen when we think about like when we're going to enjoy it. The final thing that I want to share with you, because there are 4 things that ultimately prevent you from experiencing the joy that you really should in your life right now, is that we have to look at it in terms of levels. Good goes in levels. There is the baseline level of good, which has no material attachment to it at all. All we ever really want in our lives is to be loved and be accepted. And that can be the hardest MFer on the planet. That's the baseline thing that person wants. They want to be loved and they want to be accepted. It's tribalism. It's how we are as a species. That's a level of good. Then you can climb up these different levels of good. And each level that you climb up, there's a point at which it does not get incrementally better. You just think it might make it better because it's more than you have right now. And every time you look up at the next level and you think, man, I'm going to go to that next level, you're focused on it all the time versus focused on exactly what is in front of you right now. So no wonder you're not going to enjoy what's in front of you right now because you're not even seeing it. Instead, you're looking up at the next thing or looking out at the next thing and trying to figure out, how do I get to that spot? And that's just a lack of presence. The more present you are with your life, the things you have, the freedoms that you have, the people that are in your life, the more present you can be with those things, the more joy that you're going to experience with those things. And the great byproduct of that is that time slows down because we are so in that present moment. And I'm not trying to get all meditative on you here, though meditation certainly helps. But understanding that each time good is a level, we do have to go into the unknown, and we do need to climb because we need to feel good about that. And that's cool. But once you get to a certain point, there is a law of diminishing returns, which is the same in, I think, microeconomics as it is in the human mind, which is that more doesn't always give you the same level of feeling that it once did. That's why once you've got a pretty good house, once you've got a pretty good car, once you've got a pretty good job, once you've got a good family, then more than that really isn't going to be the thing that makes you feel any different than you are right now. So I hope that you found at least one of these 4 things to be something that helps you personally enjoy your life a little bit more right now. Remember, enjoyment isn't a someday thing. Enjoyment is an everyday thing. And the only trick that you need to be able to do this, and nobody can do this for you, is simply give yourself permission to enjoy the stage of success that you're in right now. All right. Thanks for watching this video. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one.